Fantasy Football Show. Today we have a good show for you, and that is no joke. We were talking rookie tight end comps. We're talking biggest movers since the prospect guide launch. We're also talking a little bit of industry news on today's show. So stick around. It's a late round fantasy football show happening now. Welcome in, David Kitchen, a mere employee of Late Round Media with JJ Zachariason, the guy who actually owns Late Round. JJ, how are you?
Good. I'm trying to adjust my desk so that I'm like centered well. Something's going on with my camera.
Fine. You look, I mean, if anything, I'm not well adjusted, but people have been saying that for a long time.
Yeah, you're not well adjusted. That's just for sure. That's for sure. I think you asked how I'm doing. I think I was too focused on getting my desk situated because I do have a standing desk that raises and lowers depending on if I want to stand. And I'll tell you guys what, I don't stand enough.
Yeah.
With these desks, I still need to stand more. But things are good. This is our, we don't have a show next week, a late round show, because I will be on vacation. I am taking a vacation. I got an email from someone who asked if I ever take vacation. And the answer is yes, I do, because I'm taking one next week. This is one of the more dead times of the calendar for us with football and stuff. And so it lands when spring break hits. So we are doing a spring break trip with the kiddos and a couple other families. Should be a good time. I'll be around, but I will not be doing this show. We will have 2 shows though publishing still next week because the grind don't stop.
That's right. We also have the late round newsletter. Had a good email being sent out by Mr. Brandon Gadula. And as far as the prospects, some of the prospects, the movement based on a recent mock draft. So that's been fun. We've also got the Patreon, the chat is going. We got Dynasty chat happening with people and their Dynasty drafts starting up. And we also have the a little bit of a lead change in the late rounders bracket challenge.
Oh.
So
I gotta say, guys, so we have a poll right for March Madness, and if Tennessee and Duke would have won, which Duke should have won, Tennessee got obviously destroyed. Tennessee was one of my Final Four picks. I'd be cruising right now. I'd be looking real good. But I am so glad that the person who is benefiting most from this current madness in March is Brandon Gadula, because Kitchen talks so much junk after day one of the tournament. I know.
You're
but it
supposed
makes it great. It makes it great after the fact that you talked the junk. You sent it to all of our subscribers saying that
I was number one. I don't know what else to say. At that time, I was number one. It's just like after you get done with your fantasy draft, like with your buddies in your home league draft, you're drafting the room, and you have the utmost confidence that your team is about to destroy theirs.
I get it. It's just so funny that the person you destroyed just happens to be the person who has like one of the best brackets that you could possibly have right now. He has like a 99.9th percentile bracket at this point. So props to Gadula for, I know he did some leverage work too, because he has a Substack, and he did some March Madness leverage stuff that we used to do back in the day at Numberfire. It was the most popular article we did, where we would look at the ESPN who picked whom data, and you could find the EV of picking, different teams and stuff based on Numberfire analytics. Rest in peace, Numberfire. It was cool to be able to like it was actually like a really good, like there's a lot of leverage that can be gained by doing that. I used to have like pretty good success. This year I just kind of was like, oh, what's KenPom saying? Okay, I'll go roughly in that direction, which is it almost, it's gotten to the point where it's almost bad to use KenPom, I feel like, because
it just depends. Yeah, it's like also like in DFS with optimizers and sims. If everyone's using them, do you want to use something else?
You got to know your pool and who you're competing against to see if you think it's going to be other nerds that are going to just be looking at KenPom. Because I'm a college basketball guy. Like I like college basketball more than the NBA, but I have lost a little bit of interest over the last 5 to 10 years because Pitt basketball has just gone to the crapper. It's been fun when, like, they were good. They had not good, but they were like a tournament team a couple years ago and stuff. And I got to go see them play in the tournament in Greensboro, which was cool. But yeah, I mean, it's just not the same. Like I was in college at peak Pitt basketball. We're talking 1 seeds and Elite Eights, and I don't want to relive the Scotty Reynolds play. So let's move on to the news items.
DeJuan Blair, was he a Pitt Panther?
Yeah, man. DeJuan Blair. I got a picture with DeJuan Blair from we were at a club together, and I was, very sober, and he was very sober, and we had a good time.
I will say that you're not the only one happy about my bracket. My daughters in our in our house bracket, they have boxed me in. I have no path to win, and they have let me know.
Nice.
So,
nice.
Which actually makes me proud that they have let me know. Just they're getting into the spirit of March Madness. We're raising them right around here. And again, prospect guide out now. And I know that we've been talking a lot about the prospect guide, but if you want to get in, it'll be changing after the draft. But right now, there's still a good way of just setting the table with the prospect guide. And basically right after the draft, that weekend, you're going to get updates. So if you're in any sort of dynasty league, or you just want something to reference while watching the draft, day 1, day 2, day 3, this is for you. And hop into Patreon because it's also fun to be in the chat while that's happening. That's my pitch, basically, JJ.
Yeah, I think it's the best prospect guide yet. I have, results will be results, and we're going to miss on a lot of stuff. We'll hopefully hit on a lot of stuff, but I do think that at least the research and what's in it is more detailed than what you guys have ever gotten. We've already gotten that feedback from people too, that it's the best one that they've read. And I think a lot of that is Brandon's addition with the tight end work. So it's bigger, better, same price as last year. We haven't changed that. So you guys just get more for the same price.
I will say it was a good year to have a tight end section. Like last week we had, I think, both of your shows as far as guests talk about, listen, this, like, we don't know what's going to happen after the first 2 or first 3 tight ends being picked. It's a deep class.
Yeah, it's a fairly deep class for sure. I mean, last year's class was awesome, so if we would have done it last year, it would have been good too. But yeah, it's a good class at tight end.
All right, let's get on with it.
Today's fantasy news.
Okay, again, another week. We have our available free agents. No one has moved off of this list, and we are basically going down to GM speak and rumors and players meeting with teams. So with all that being said, it's not that interesting of a news week. However, there were some the moves within the industry, JJ, with PFF letting go a lot of their content-facing employees.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's sad when this kind of stuff happens. I sent a tweet out, after I had seen, I mean, to be fair, I saw all of the news that evening and night, whenever it all kind of went down. And then I didn't tweet until the next day. I've been trying to do that more, not just
let it breathe.
Yeah. I like to sleep on it a little bit. I don't want to say anything that's going to ruffle feathers. I just want to be honest with the takes and stuff. But yeah, so I feel for the folks who got let go of PFF. On one hand, you can see why a company goes in the direction that they go in. And so my tweet kind of talked about, very quickly just talked about, like, hey, if you're a PFF content creator and you're thinking about, because look, going out on your own is not something that everyone can or wants to do or whatever the case may be. So it shouldn't be for everybody, because if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if someone at PFF is sitting there being like, hey, I'm thinking about just going out on my own because I don't want to, be run under this corporate leadership of any company anymore, I'd say do it. I think that late round is proof of concept in a way of a company that can thrive and do well and be profitable, after being in a similar situation. Now, I didn't get let go. I left FanDuel,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit different, but it's the same idea that if you have content that you think other people will enjoy consuming and that you think that it's going to be utilized in a favorable way, then you should try your best to sell it in some way. I'm not saying that you got to like sell your soul. Like that's not, I think the opposite of that when it comes to the work that you do. I just think that good content deserves to be loved by the people who are consuming that content. And oftentimes these companies can get in the way of that. Right.
Yeah.
And I was lucky, like FanDuel and Numberfire were pretty open with me. Like I only have good things to say about working, at FanDuel and at Numberfire, generally speaking. I think everyone, when you're working in an environment that's not yours, like you're going to have, even the environment that is yours, like I still complain about my job sometimes, like the stuff that we have to do, but like all things considered, like FanDuel and Numberfire treated me well and like great people. And like, I have nothing bad to say. But when you're a creator and you want to create, I want people to feel empowered to go out and at least try to do that, by themselves and on their own. Now, whenever I sent that tweet out, there was a lot of remarks about AI and how, someone responded like, your job is going to be gone because of AI. I understand all of that. And I understand people's reaction with AI. And, there was a comment that you and I made, I think either last week or the week before, about having the late round prospect guide be
Robo JJ's voice.
Be a Robo JJ voice and someone took that in there's a negative review now of the podcast where they took that and they said, oh, JJ won't pay somebody to read his audiobook. He'd rather just have AI do it. That's not even remotely. We're not doing the audiobook because that's a huge project undertaking to do, right? It has nothing to do with AI. It has to just do with the manpower and the ability to, and the brain power to, be able to deliver something like that, right? Like we're fully aware of what's going on in the AI world. And there was a response that was related to that with the PFF content stuff where, it's just like, oh, AI is I think that's just like the knee-jerk response from people anytime there's cuts this time in life, right? In this era, it's like, oh, it's AI that's doing that. And that's probably part of it, like that's the reality of the world that we're living in right now. Is a lot of people's jobs, my job, anyone's job is like up for grabs in a way, at least parts of them, due to AI. And you got to find, your way to differentiate from that and to be a useful, connector piece that's not AI to an audience. And so like, I get all of that. I'm not really speaking about this from a business perspective. I'm speaking about this from a human perspective. It's sad when a lot of people, colleagues or not, get let go of a job and there is an uproar, if you will, from some of those people. Right now, earlier today, I listened to a good chunk of it on Check the Mic with Steve Palazzolo, who was on Perspectives last week, and Sam Monson, who we both were able to meet at Radio Row this year and at the Super Bowl. They have their show and it's really popular and they're great at it and they're great at what they do. And they had Mike Renner on, and Renner is he was at PFF for a while, great prospector and does really great work himself. And they were basically just giving the down low on what was going on with PFF. And it sounded like from their perspective that it's not so much the fact that like PFF, that like they just made a lot of money with this sale, right? Like they're able to, you can't really call it a failure if you're making $130 million off of this, but their stance, and I think it's valid, is that they didn't treat their employees always properly, especially the content people. And on top of that, they thought that they could have made this even better. Like this could have been an even bigger type of acquisition and situation than what it was, because there was a lot of kind of just turning a blind eye and just ignoring what the content creators were kind of saying about the direction of the business and stuff. And so I'm bringing all of this up because I think it's important for people to, recognize that like, yeah, they're talking football and yeah, it's really cool to be able to do that for a living, but you also, there's purpose beyond that with what you do. Like you want to build something really cool and you want to build something awesome. And if there's something in the way of that with your job or whatever the case may be, in my eyes, like I think everyone should feel empowered to go try to do what they're passionate about, whatever that thing is, because I think everyone brings something to the table for this world, like someone has some skill set that other people don't know exists, and we would love to see that it exists, and hopefully it can be monetized in some way, and so hopefully all the folks at PFF, are able to bounce back and get a job quickly. And hopefully, honestly, PFF from our perspective doesn't change much, because I think it's a really valuable tool for content creators like myself, for consumers like the people who are watching or listening to the show right now. There's great data. You can agree and disagree and all of that about what some of their grades say and stuff, but some of the raw data that they have is just incredibly valuable, and it gets passed around like crazy through all of these mediums. And it sounds like they are sticking around with that consumer product, at least in the short term, which is good. But we'll see. I think bringing this up is important because PFF is a huge, huge part of what we all do, whether you're listening and consuming or whether you are creating. It's a central point of a lot of people's processes. And so when there's change like this, I think we have to at least address it. So hopefully I addressed it at least from the content creator perspective, but also, from a business perspective a little bit.
I would say from a consumer perspective, as someone who went through a few changes as far as our site, former company that I worked for, site being acquired by a much larger company. If that happens, watch out, because then it's no longer the same company that it once was. So it could go one or two other ways. But I mean, I was a part of something that was profitable as well. It does not matter if the company that's in charge of it does not see the value that you see or the consumer sees in it. I will say, though, the media landscape is changing. And I think like this show, I think JJ, your business is like an example of that. You don't have to, there's so many tools. You don't have to be a part of it. Like back in the day, you wanted to get on board, PFF or Roto World or one of these like legacy sites, because then you have made it, you've given your platform. Now you can just go do it.
Yeah. And, I mean, now the unfortunate side is like Roto World is not the Roto World used to be like the Mecca. I mean, it was
like teams would actually go to Roto World.
And if you had an opportunity, I got a break when Silva in 2013 allowed me to do, or 2012 allowed me to do a quarterback series on Roto World. I still have screenshots of when that happened because it was such a big deal of being able to be published on that platform. And we're just in a completely different landscape these days. And by the way, people don't know this. I wrote probably 4 articles for PFF in my lifetime. I was working under
I knew that.
Yeah, I was working under Mike Clay when he was at PFF before he went to ESPN. And as that was going on, it was all free. They were not paying writers. And then they came up with this plan to pay writers. And they hit me up and they said, hey, you're one of the select writers that we want to start paying money to write content. But it was at the exact same time that I got a job offer from Numberfire. And so I never was able to go that route. But I wrote I wrote an article on Pierre Garçon, I think, for PFF, Roddy White at one point. But yeah, I did some, so there's at least a little bit of a tie for me with PFF too. Totally different era though. Totally different.
Yeah. I was going to say, even like Mike Clay was like OG PFF.
Mike Clay was people don't even realize that Mike Clay was at PFF.
Right.
That's how I met Clay and built a relationship. Like I've been friends with Clay for over a decade now. And like I met him through PFF. Yeah.
It's showing your age.
I know, man. I'm such an unk. It's crazy. It's because I remember when I came in, I was so young. Like I was like I was 23, 24 years old. And it's crazy that now I'm in my late 30s.
Yeah. And now there are so many more platforms, and there used to be just like the internet, and then Twitter pretty much was it. And then now with YouTube and all the other platforms, there's so much out there.
And I want to say, I know we spent some time on this. It's the off season, guys. There's not that much to talk about. Like we were going to have a hard time filling an hour show anyway. So just this topic, I think, is going to be at least interesting to some people listening. And I know that if you didn't care about it and you're frustrated, you can leave a comment and get upset at us, but
don't leave a 2-star review. Saying that
I don't think people realize that when if you hate one little thing about the show or something, give me the constructive criticism and we can try to fix it or address it. But when you leave bad reviews, actual star reviews based on one small thing, that does impact the product, and so if you've gotten something out of the show, go flood the podcast with positive reviews right now is what I'm basically saying.
All right. Let's talk about some player quote unquote news. Najee Harris meeting with some teams. Seahawks and Raiders, a couple of teams that are meeting with, but I think even the fact that he's meeting with these teams is somewhat relevant because, he could take away some of the shine from some of these positions, or he could add to it, JJ.
I mean, it's just hard for me to back a 28-year-old coming off a, Achilles devastating injury typically for running backs. Like we don't see a ton of guys bounce back. That like he could bounce, like if this were 2 years later, I would maybe feel something more, but the fact that it's like, I don't know if if he goes to Seattle, let's say, is he a better running back than like in this state, right? Than Emmanuel Wilson? I don't know. Like I feel
like whoever goes to Seattle, we're just gonna like the community at large is just gonna steam up.
Yeah, and it's gonna be Jadarian Price, and it's gonna really, really destroy my brain on that Friday and Saturday. We're doing the prospect guide updates. I'm just gonna have a really tough time figuring out what to do.
Okay, Kittle apparently on track to start week 1. I'm gonna say cap on this, JJ.
Yeah, I will too.
Yeah.
Again, a devastating injury and an older guy who obviously is a freak from an athleticism standpoint. But yeah, I mean, I can't get behind that. Especially like Jake Tonjes isn't that bad of a backup and fill in for them. I don't think that they need to rush Kittle back.
Yeah.
They add Mike Evans. They have like Ricky Pearsall should be healthy. We'll see what they do in the draft. I think that they're still a team that could address wide receiver. But yeah, I'm not, this is what teams do this time of year, he's on track. It's like, okay, what else are you going to say? Like, what are you going to say? He's not going to play till week 10,
Yeah. It's even like with the coach speak and the GM speak, obviously they have like the coaches meetings. I don't know if you saw McCarthy said like, everybody's got a clean slate when asked about like Caleb Johnson, like, what is he going to say? No, like this guy sucks. Like he's not gonna get on the field. So if you are asked about a position and you say something, I think it's different than like if like a GM or a coach brings it up themselves. That's just that's me. But speaking of, the Niners brass saying that Juwan Jennings will not be back with the 49ers, something that we already knew, but I'm still a little bit surprised he hasn't signed anywhere.
A little bit. I mean, because I think that he's on the fringe of being, we've talked about this before. Like you typically see some of these veterans just kind of wait it out a little bit before, signing with the team. And with Juwan Jennings, he's kind of on the fringe of like being one of those guys. But it's just crazy to think a year ago he was like holding out, and less than a year ago, like holding out, trying to get a new contract because he was coming off a big season. And
that's probably why.
Good. Like I think he's good, and he's a player. Like he's a good physical player, which teams generally do like. I think with the 49ers, they're kind of like, they've dealt with the Ayuk stuff. They've dealt with a little bit of Juwan Jennings, like Juwan Jennings. And it's seemingly they've had like, they were able to come back together and have a relationship and stuff, but they're probably just like, get me out of this. Like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. You also have to question when teams don't re-sign a player. This is why with wide receivers, like we see when they change teams, it's usually better. And this is some research we're gonna be doing for the draft guide this year, but it's usually better via trade than signing, because what kind of team lets go of a player who's good, especially a player at a position like wide receiver. So I think there's some of those questions that pop up for Jennings. Am I surprised he hasn't signed? Yes. I think that I said this before, if he is in a position where he's more money hungry, which I think he probably would be, because he wasn't like this highly touted player coming out. It's not like he got these massive, massive contracts. Maybe a team like Miami would go after him and just give him what he wants, whatever, no big deal. And then they at least have a body, to throw to. And then he's in a position where, from a real life football perspective, they're not winning a Super Bowl this year or probably anytime soon.
Yeah, it's 1 year deal season for these guys. Saints planning on keeping Kamara in the running back room. This gets a winky face from me at the end, because I do love that in the news and rumors channel, we had the tweet in our Discord that the Saints plan on having Alvin Kamara in the running back room alongside Travis Etienne. And then the reaction, like the little emoji reactions, were just 4 emojis with the winky face. Like, yeah, not going to happen. Like, again, what else are you going to say?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about his situation because I kind of just assumed that he was gone. So I don't want to comment on the contract situation that I don't know enough about and like what it looks like if they were to cut him. But it sounds like that's probably still the direction. We'll see. The thing with Kamara that's interesting is that he let it be known when he signed that other contract that he wanted to stay in New Orleans, that he didn't want to play anywhere else. He doesn't. I don't think he's the kind of player that has like he's kind of a like just like a very like chill, like from an off the field standpoint, he's not like the standard player. You know, he's got more personality to him and like he's more unique. And from that standpoint, maybe he doesn't really care about ring chasing so much either. And so it'll be interesting, I think, the way that this all goes down, because if he's not a Saint, does he retire? You know, is he just done? And after last year, you know, it seemed like the wheels started to come off a little bit. Like maybe he just realizes that this is it for him.
Okay. Ballard praises Josh Downs. This is a direct quote. I think Josh Downs is freaking good. I do. I've always thought he's good. I think allowing him some more opportunities, we're going to see some of the special stuff you've seen in the past, but more.
Yeah. I mean, look, I talked about this on the free agent episode that I did a month ago or whatever it was. Talked about it on some shows that I think Downs is like if you look at his peripherals, his per route run numbers have always been really, really good. He's just in the Jaden Reed situation where they don't use him outside the slot. And in today's game where you're getting more 2 wide receiver sets, that means you're even more of a rotational player and you're just not going to see the volume that you want in fantasy football. But if you look at their wide receiver room right now, I mean, there's not anything outside of Alec Pierce. And so, you know, I do think they're going to address wide receiver in the draft. They need another perimeter guy probably to develop, like a Jacoby Lane or something like that. But I do think Josh Downs can play on the outside. Like I don't know, man. I think a lot of these slot guys, not I don't want to generalize, but I think that like the really good slot guys can probably do a lot more on the perimeter than people give them credit for in general. And you even see some players, Tampa Bay is the easiest example, where they just don't even care if they're slot or perimeter wide receivers when they're coming out of school. I mean, they drafted Jalen McMillan and Emeka Ibuka in back-to-back years, and they use them both on the outside, you know, like, and they've been fine on the outside, right? So I think that like some of it's coaching, some of it's just like the willingness to put him there. And I think Downs has the route running skill set to be able to do more than what he's done in that offense. So I'm not surprised by what Ballard's saying here. I hope that you were able to buy lower, because I guarantee you his price goes up at least a little bit based on the comments, in Dynasty. But yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be an interesting sort of later round dart throw in redraft this year.
No Pittman. Obviously his value has gone up. Bills already monitoring Dalton Kincaid. Yeah. This was an interesting quote from Joe Brady. He just said that he's already wondering like how to basically, I feel like I might need to just get the direct quote here, but Brady's already wondering how Buffalo will maintain Kincaid's week to week and play to play wherewithal.
Yeah, I mean, look, the other thing that I like to do with this coach speak stuff is I like to look at actions, and they re-signed Dawson Knox this offseason. So that to me signals that maybe Dalton Kincaid is not about to see that full-time role that everyone has just been waiting for. You know, he's usually in that like 60% route share range, and that's just not enough. Talked about it a lot last year on the show. You know, he kind of bucked the regression trend a little bit, so good on him, but it's just not the kind of player that you can sustainably expect like elite fantasy production from. Fortunately, he's in a good offense, but yeah, I mean, I read online, and someone can fact check me if you're a doctor or something like that, but he had that PCL, right? And with PCLs, it's not like a reconstruction type situation. It's more of a like, gotta just play through it and deal with it. And it's not as like straightforward necessarily as like even an ACL, it sounded like. And so that could just be what we're dealing with Kincaid, which means we're probably, at least in the short term, year, 2 years, however long, not going to see full-time Dalton Kincaid, which sucks.
Yeah. He hurt his PCL 2 years ago in 2024 and then declined to get surgery, which if as someone who's had knee injuries, I know if the PCL isn't like fully torn, you don't have to have surgery. But then when you get complications, that's that's
right.
not great.
Someone in chat, by the way, is saying that they think it was a restructure and not a re-sign for Dawson Knox. I think it was an extension. So there was it technically was more like he wasn't set to be a free agent, I don't think, but it was more of a, I can't remember exactly what his status was, but it was an extension of where he already was. So he just was able to stick around. But you don't do something like that unless you either really like that player, which they probably do with Dawson Knox, or they could have something to do with this with Dalton Kincaid,
Okay. It feels like something that happens every offseason, Jalen Hurts annual hit piece. I don't know if you read any of this, JJ, but I don't think it's surprising, but it's, I guess, worth talking about that the insider, I think Jeremy Fowler, Tim McManus wrote a piece on ESPN about Jalen Hurts not being coachable, bad body language, that sort of thing. And listen, Hurts has had multiple offensive coordinators. Some have succeeded, some haven't. But did you read this piece? And if so, like, what's your takeaway on it?
I didn't, but I get really, like, it's just really bizarre to me that people have such strong feelings about like a player like Hurts when, like, I'm not using quarterback wins as a thing here, but like he's been to multiple Super Bowls. He won a Super Bowl. Yeah. And to say that he had nothing to do with that or that it was just the system is absolute garbage. He played out of his mind in both of those games. Like he was fantastic in both of those games. And so, I mean, like, I think Jalen Hurts is not a bad quarterback the way that others do. And I think last year's offense, I went back and I watched some of it again too this offseason. Last year's offense was just so bad that you have to at least feel optimistic that things will get better this year. And that if we had a better system in place and a better coordinator for them last year, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We might not even be having the conversation about AJ Brown. Who knows? Because he might've been happier. Right. So I don't want to just dismiss the circumstances he was working under and playing under last year. And I think Hurts is Hurts this elite passer? No, but like to say, again, I haven't read the piece, but if they're like trying to knock his character or his whatever the case may be, like it seems kind of absurd to me when he's literally done great at every level of his football career and he's gotten better. Like he got better as a passer in the NFL too. So I'm more pro than con Jalen Hurts. If you were to use the consensus opinion as like the median there, I just think the consensus opinion is kind of just like out of whack with him.
Our good buddy Josh Norris kind of said it. He's like, listen, the good offensive coordinators have done well with Hurts as far as getting him to like accentuating the strengths that he has and getting him to step outside of his comfort zone, which most likely is like under center. And the bad ones like Patullo have not. Yeah. So that's kind of,
but that's the case. That's the case for any non-elite quarterback.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
That's the point is that like, he's not elite. No, but like, this is the same thing that you'll get from any quarterback who is not elite. So I don't think it's unique to Jalen Hurts.
All right.
Today's data.
All right, JJ, we've got the biggest movers since the prospect guide launch, and you have pro and like negative movers here.
Yeah. So what I did here was I looked at, and Brandon Gadula helped me pull this yesterday, but I looked at the draft capital that we used in the pre-draft guide, the launch. So that was March 16th, I think we launched the prospect guide. So like Jeremiah Love in that guide with his score has a draft capital of 6. Omar Cooper has a draft capital of 34. So this was before some of that spike happened for Omar Cooper. Bryce Lance, 115. And then you can see as of 3/31, this is via NFL mock draft database. Jeremiah Love has gone up 2 spots. Omar Cooper's gone up 10 spots. And what I wanted to do is not just look at the raw number of spots these guys rose by, because 2 spots in the last, latter rounds of the draft is not nearly the same as 2 spots in the early parts of the first round. And so what I did was I used Chase Stewart's draft value chart, which is similar to like the Jimmy Johnson one, but it's used off of what's the metric, the value metric that Pro Football Reference has, approximate value, I think it's called. And so he uses that to come up with this chart that people use all the time now to say, okay, the first overall pick has this approximate value, a second overall pick has this, and so on and so forth. And it's like, it decays, right? So like the middle of the 5th round is not that different from like the middle of the 7th round versus the middle of the 1st round will have a bigger delta to the middle of the 3rd round or the 2nd round. And so when you look at the value change with the 4th overall pick for Jeremiah Love versus the 6th overall pick, he's seen the biggest jump, even though it's only 2 spots, but he is seeing the biggest jump. Omar Cooper, a big jump, now almost locked into the 1st round. So these guys' ZAP scores will increase, basically, is what I'm saying, versus what you're seeing right now. So it's Bryce Lance, Omar Cooper, and Jeremiah Love. And then there's Chris Bell, Zon Stribling. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's the first time I've said it out loud. I've only been writing it. Yeah. Skylar Bell, Jadarian Price, Carnell Tate, Ted Hurst, and Deion Burks, right? So all of those guys have seen an uptick in draft capital versus where they were when I published the guide. Now, on the opposite end, on the very bottom, you have Katron Allen, who I didn't really love as a prospect to begin with, but it looks like, draft capital is sort of catching up to that idea. Reggie Virgil, CJ Daniels, Emmett Johnson has gone from an 87th overall to 104th overall. Malachi Fields has dropped by about 10 spots because he had that like Senior Bowl bump, and that seems to be wearing off a little bit. Nick Singleton's dropped a decent bit. Zach Branch, Denzel Boston, Brendan Thompson, the speedy guy, and Elijah Surratt. So those are the guys who have kind of gone in the opposite direction. I got a lot of people wondering why Elijah Surratt looked so poor in the prospect model versus some of the other kind of day 2 wide receivers. I wouldn't say that at all. It's just that you guys, maybe next year we put in the project, like the assumed capital, for the pre-draft versions that people know. But some people have thought that like Elijah Surratt was like a late 1st rounder, early 2nd rounder, but he was a 67th overall pick at the time and at the moment that I published the prospect guide. If you read the blurb, like he has pretty good, metrics, like breakout scores good, his trajectory was good, all that kind of stuff. So, Surratt, I like as a prospect. I think he's good. But it's just, I'm baking in projected draft capital, and it seems like the fantasy community likes Surratt more than the NFL actually does, or hypothetically actually does.
The Jeremiah Love thing is like, it's just really interesting. It seems like he's either going to go 4 or 5, but as a Titans fan, every other day, they're just flip-flopping between an edge rusher and Jeremiah Love. And
it's
going to be a one or the two, but
yeah. The other thing I want to throw out there and is a question that we're getting. Is this just based on analysts' opinions, or did anything change like the combine? This is based off of mock drafts that come into NFL mock draft database that I don't know if they like weigh some of them differently. I'm assuming they do. And they take a consensus score basically of all of these players, and they're able to give big board consensus ranks on these guys. Now, people will say, oh, that doesn't like what good does that do? Well, I've tested this data. I actually did an episode last year on the results of those tests. And essentially what I found was that the draft capital for mock drafts. So this is right before the NFL draft starts, to be fair. So it's, you get another month of getting mock drafts and of hearing what teams are going to do and stuff. But the predictiveness of the mock draft data is worse than actual draft capital, which isn't a surprise, but it's really not bad. Like it's not like bad data to work off of, to the point where the running back model, the ZAP model with the running back model, will use 10% for draft capital of a mock draft score, because for whatever reason, the consensus seems to be a lot better with running backs than other positions, or at least with wide receiver. And so like this data is not nothing. I know that people are listening to this and they're probably like, oh, what does this matter? I mean, it's actually kind of predictive. And so you should pay attention if you're just curious of like movement and stuff and like true movement, you should pay attention to some of that mock draft stuff, because not only that, but when we have reaches, like Isaac Tesla last year, or
Lions,
Pat Bryant last year was kind of a reach. Like when you have those reaches, those guys typically underperform versus expectation. And it makes sense, right? Because one team wanted that player, whereas when the opposite happens, when a player falls in the draft versus expected, that player generally does a little bit better than what you, or at least, that's not as big of a deal as when a team reaches. And it makes sense, because when a team reaches, that's just one team saying that we need to, go that route and do that, when there's all of these other data points saying that guy's not good enough for that draft capital.
Yeah. And also you've got insider speak, you have players with injuries,
Yeah.
good or bad, that can
Yeah.
heal up. So lots of stuff contribute to those things that, as far as like when we produce the draft guide. And again, another reason, JJ, why people just need to get the draft guide, because then you just get the updates.
Right, you
After
can
the
have
draft
both
happens.
versions then. If you buy after the NFL draft, you don't get the pre-draft version. It's kind of fun to look at the pre-draft version.
Yeah, to see where people were. All right, let's get on to some more comparisons.
The late round main event.
We've got favorite 2026 draft comps for the tight end position. This week, JJ.
Yeah, so as you guys know, in the prospect guide, Brandon Gadula did all of the tight end write-ups. So I'm not as intimate with this stuff as I was with running back and wide receiver, because I didn't research it the same way that I researched running back and wide receiver. I, of course, was editing and working with Brandon and all of that. So like, I know these guys. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's just that I just really, really know the running back and wide receiver like journeys and stuff, and like what schools they played for before they're fine, all of that kind of stuff. So what you're gonna see today is, over the last week, I did some vibe coding, some AI vibe coding.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Built out sort of a ZAP model database of sorts that allows me to query things quicker and get some cool visuals to share on shows like this. It's really helpful for productivity from just an efficiency standpoint. And so what we have right now, and this is not we're having discussions about what we can and can't publish, all this kind of stuff. But what we have here you're going to see spider charts of these comps. I wish we had these for the other two shows that we did with running back and wide receiver, but you can kind of see how similar the players look via the image in the graphic with the spider chart. And so we'll start here. We'll start with Sam Roush versus Darnell Washington, his top comp.
Yeah, boy.
Which Roush was just a big boy, 6'6", 267. Darnell Washington was 6'7", 264. So Roush is kind of beefier, which is kind of crazy. Height adjusted speed scores were both really good because they were both relatively fast at their height and weight. So it's not like they were blazing. They weren't Kenyon Sadiq, but they were able to run relatively fast given their size. Their breakout scores are pretty similar, 38 and 37. And you can see the overlay of the spider chart. Like, they look pretty similar within height adjusted speed score, the four metric I just talked about: breakout score, height adjusted speed score, height and weight. Washington was better on a per route run basis. I think he was a better prospect in general. I know that Washington has been used as like a crazy, fantasy, type asset, but Washington still, I think, was a better prospect than what we're looking at here. He's better per route run numbers. Roush is kind of weak actually in most per route run numbers. Washington was also elite in average depth of target and yak per reception. So he not only was getting targets on the field, but then he was also creating a lot after those catches. And Roush was not used downfield. So it's not a one-to-one comparison in terms of usage, but I do think if you were to find a comp for the big bodied Roush, it would probably be Darnell Washington in this class.
And Roush is a smart guy too, JJ. Went to Stanford. And did you ever see his, like, some of those player pictures that they had?
Yeah.
With the tape. I don't know if I can.
Wait, what do you refer? What is this refer?
With the like, you're like in the media guide.
Yeah.
Your picture. If you look up Sam Roush, he had like the glasses and the tape in the middle.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what
so. Just a nerdy,
little nerdy
guy that goes to Stanford. All right, next we've got another guy who went to a prestigious university. Smart guy, Eli Stowers.
Yes. So I'm going to just talk about the higher end prospects in this class for the most part. Eli Stowers does look a decent bit like Sam Laporta. You can see though in this chart that, so green is Stowers and the blue is Laporta. And Stowers, looks better in a lot of the production metrics, but we do have a little bit more weight to Laporta. He's 6 pounds heavier and he's 6'3" versus Stowers being 6'4". So there's a little bit of a, just frame difference between the two. Breakout scores though, they were both 90th percentile, almost identical breakout scores for Laporta and Stowers. Career yards per route run, 82nd to the 94th percentile for those guys, at 2.34 for Stowers, which is crazy. and 1.89 for Laporta. Stowers had a little bit better of a first downs per route run rate, but fairly comparable, 87th to 97th percentile. And their career ADOTs, they were used kind of closer to the line of scrimmage, sub 50th percentile ADOTs. Stowers, though, overall, man, like just an elite production profile, crazy production profile for him. I think the biggest differentiator between Stowers and Laporta is also athleticism. Like Stowers was more of an athlete at the combine.
He broke the record for high jump.
Right. But I'm even just talking about speed score. You get 92nd percentile to 81st percentile between the two of them. So yeah, like I think Stowers is a better prospect. Laporta's obviously hit at the next level. So it's, hard for us to say like Stowers is better than Laporta, but as prospects, I liked Laporta a lot coming out too. But Stowers, I think, just looks better. It's just, I don't know if it's the blocking. I think it is the blocking as to why his draft capital isn't higher than it is, because realistically, when you go side by side of Stowers to Kenyon Sadiq, you could easily make the argument that Stowers looks like a better receiver, like that he's the better, you would make the argument that he's the better pass catcher, fantasy asset, all the above. It's just really hard to reconcile, 15th overall draft capital or 19th overall draft capital versus 50th overall draft capital. Like that's the main problem between the two of them.
You remember last year we thought we knew which tight end would be drafted first. And then we had a little bit of an audible there. We got a little bit surprised. You think that's possible this year?
I don't think it's going to happen to that degree. Cause even if you look at NFL mock, I'm trying to pull it up. If you look at NFL mock draft database and you look at consensus big boards last year, there was not the same kind of difference. Like right now, I'm looking at it right now. Kenyon Sadiq is at 17th overall. Eli Stowers at 54th overall. Okay. Yeah. For context, last year at tight end, Tyler Warren was 8th overall and Colson Loveland was 15th overall. So like both of them, like Tyler Warren was looked at similar to Kenyon Sadiq, let's say. I mean, he was technically looked at even more favorably. And Colson Loveland, that gap was just not that significant, not significant enough. And I think that like Loveland also, when you factor in draft capital, is the best prospect of the four of those guys. Like he, in the model, he has a perfect score. There's only a handful of guys that have a score of 100 and he's one of them. And so I think Loveland is the better prospect of all those guys. If Stowers went 15th overall or, 10th overall or something, then I do think that would make the argument that he would be just as good, but I just don't think he's going to see that kind of draft capital.
All right. Big Eli Stowers fan here. Let's get on to another guy I'm a fan of on the comp side. That's Chig Okonkwo. You have Oscar Delp and Chig being the comps here.
Yeah, so Delp, 6'5", he's a little bit taller than Okonkwo. He weighs a little bit more. Okonkwo is just kind of a smaller tight end. Honestly, Okonkwo would fit really well in this class because we get a lot of undersized tight ends in this class, just guys who are like around that 240 range. Both of them, though, didn't have the best max adjusted yards per team pass attempt numbers in college. Their breakout scores were not very strong. You get 18.5 or 18.6 for Delp and 20.5 for Okonkwo. And their career yards per out run, 1.23 and 1.11. Neither of them are that strong. But what you have is, again, relatively similar size players here. I think Delp overall is just a better prospect. But when you adjust Delp's pro day numbers, which he had a great pro day from a measurement standpoint, he had a 117 height adjusted speed score. Chig was at 112. I think the big differentiator between the two of them is that Delp has a 79th percentile yak per reception. Chig was in the 37th percentile. And there was also a higher ADOT for Delp versus Chig. Like, I think Delp has a lot more that he's bringing to the table than Okonkwo did as a prospect. And we liked Okonkwo because there was athleticism there. There was the pass cut, like there was this, year one, he had a great yards per out run rate and such. Like, I think Delp is a pretty good prospect. I'm interested to see what happens with him, but I don't want to overstate only the athleticism because we do often see that when we do that and when there's not any sort of backbone at all from a receiving standpoint, it can get you in trouble. I don't think his receiving profile is like that egregious, but it's definitely below average. It's not the best that we've seen.
Okay. Next we've got Max Clare being compared to Greg Dulcich.
Yes. Also, someone's asking in chat about touching on the lower A dots for tight ends being a positive signal. I don't know if it's a positive signal. I'm not taking the A dot stuff as a negative signal, though, just to be clear, right? Because yes, it could be a get the ball in his hands kind of situation. I'm mostly noting that typically there's an inverse correlation with A dot and yak. And so when you have, like, just think about it, like you get a screen, right? You should be able to generate yak off that screen versus one that's just like down the field. But there's also sample size issues that you run into with yak and stuff. Like it's not really, it's not a point in the model. It's not anything that we're like hang our hat on, the yak stuff, but it's just an interesting data point to show the difference in how these guys were used in college and deployed in college. All right. Max Clare versus Greg Dulcich. Clare 6'4", Dulcich 6. They're almost identical inside. This is actually one of the best comps, I think, on today's episode because you have almost identical sizes, almost identical height adjusted speed scores. Their max adjusted yards per team pass attempt were both elite, 94th percentile or better. Their breakout scores, 94th percentile or better. So you're looking at like decent enough size, not amazingly huge, but decent enough size where their height adjusted speed score is kind of mid overall for a tight end, but they had really good collegiate production and there should be probably similar draft capital as well. Again, the biggest differentiator, Claire had a much lower A dot and then a lower yak per reception. And then Brandon, I was talking to Brandon about these comps and he brought up that he thinks that Claire is like a lesser version of like Mark Andrews. If you want to think of a player that he would look to, and then, he shared some comparisons and stuff, but it was hard for me to get away from the Dulcich comp. If you just look at this chart, it's like the same exact freaking thing, right? Like,
yeah. Spider-Man meme.
It's crazy. It's like the same kind of profile. So I think that's what we're working with Claire. And like Dulcich hasn't really panned out in the NFL. I understand that.
No, but we liked him.
That doesn't mean that Claire won't,
Yeah. We liked him. Like when he was with Denver.
Yeah. There was a time that you could sell if you wanted to,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a positive spin. You could have sold him for more. All right. Next. Oh, there's the the headshot. I was like, where'd it go? I know I pasted it here.
Yeah. So we'll delete that out of there.
Yeah.
Oh, there's more than one. How many times did you paste that?
I was like, where is this going? I was pasting it in the column. It did not. It wasn't.
Glad
there.
It wasn't an inappropriate picture. Kenyon Sadiq and Noah Fant. Now, I want to say a few things about this. There's a lot of people who are down on Sadiq because his comps are not very strong. Not just for the late round prospect guide. I'm saying in general. Like it's hard to find very good comps that end up being like awesome for Kenyon Sadiq. I think the best one that's reasonable is Evan Ingram, who's our third comp for him. And that would be a decent outcome. I know that people are like, oh, Evan Ingram. It's like, he's had a great career from a production standpoint. Like, let's stop this. Right. The one thing I'll say though, is that with tight end and finding comps, there aren't as many tight ends to choose from in general. And then on top of that, there are only a handful of tight ends who are truly elite in fantasy football to begin with. And so most comps that you're going to see are going to be of like non-uber productive fantasy assets because there aren't many uber productive fantasy assets at tight end to begin with. Right. Yeah. So the Noah Fant comp is very real. And I do think there's a very real chance that Kenyon Sadiq goes down this path as a pro, like that he's just an athlete and it doesn't really translate that well to production and to being on the field and to being a great star in the league. But just because there are these comps doesn't mean that there's not an outcome here where Sadiq does really well because there just aren't many comps in general for tight ends, right? They just don't exist the same way that they do at wide receiver or even running back. So Sadiq is 6'3", Fant 6'4", Sadiq 241, Fant 249. So similar enough BMIs. They both had elite height adjusted speed scores, 96 percentile plus. I mean, Sadiq's is like the 100th percentile. Adjusted yards per team pass attempt, relatively similar. Breakout scores, you have Sadiq at 62.3. You have Fant at 66.3. Career yards per out run, 1.72, 1.81. So 74th to 79th percentile. A lot of this lines up. Again, the difference is going back to A-dot, where Sadiq had a really low A-dot and Fant had a really high A-dot throughout college. But that's really the differentiator to me. And maybe there is signal that they were using Sadiq closer to the line because they wanted to get him the ball. Regardless, I think Sadiq is still a good prospect, despite the fact that OJ Howard pops up or Noah Fant pops up. It's like comps for tight ends are naturally going to suck. They're just not going to be that good. You're not going to get Brock Bowers for many tight ends, if any tight end. It's just not going to happen. And so don't be too discouraged if you see a guy like Fant for such a highly touted prospect like Sadiq.
Yeah, people will get offended by this comp, just so we're clear.
Yeah, I'm ready and prepared. I understand. I think I understand like why they would feel that way or why they might be low on Sadiq. I don't think he's a flawless prospect at all. It's just that this draft class in general just kind of sucks. And so I say kind of sucks. I think the wide receivers are fine and good. The tight ends are fine and good. But when you're talking about like high end talent, you only have Jeremiah Love at running back. There's no great quarterbacks other than maybe Mendoza. And so now all of a sudden in a super flex rookie draft, you're in the middle of the first round and you're like, yeah, I'll just take the traits guy and Sadiq who got top 15 draft capital. I guess I'll go that direction, but there are some red flags here.
Understood. Understood. And people just have to, it might be good for them just to reset expectations too.
Yeah.
Like the as far as the range of outcomes go. And I understand about resetting expectations because that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, as we close this up, say goodbye. I want to just put out there that yes, I am 13th, and there are not too many teams in this late rounders bracket because it was a late edition in our Discord, and I was first place. Now I'm 13th place, and I just want to give Brandon Gadula his flowers as being in the 99th percentile and having a score of 980. Well done, Brandon.
99.7th percentile bracket for Gadula. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the 79th percentile now after the Duke and Tennessee L's.
And shout out to becoming a Best Ball Bro co-host Rich Ryan for being third place. So he has a path to win this. And if we scroll down, I think we can see JJU there at
I'm in 8th.
Yeah.
I'm ahead of you.
Oh, dang. I accidentally pasted my other bracket in my home league. Where I'm 99.8%.
Get this out of here. Get this out of here. You have one sheet. Whatever happened to the sheet of integrity?
I'm sorry.
Whatever happened to this? I have one bracket that I just put into every pool that I have. I know that's not good game theory, but that's what you got to do if you have any integrity.
I'm sorry. That was a slip, and I did let people know that my second bracket, 99.8%. But it is what it is. Brandon Gadula also made fun of me a little bit in our chat, saying, "Yeah, this is like my girlfriend. She doesn't go here, but she definitely exists." And then he came back saying, "Oh, I made a change. I should have picked Arizona to win."
Yeah. But it's also like when you're in your home league and you're like, yeah, I might have gotten 10th in my home league, but I won so many other leagues, like anyone cares.
Yeah. No one cares about your bracket. Most people don't care about your fantasy team as well. JJ, we did have a question from Ranch Dressing. Do you remember Ranch Dressing?
Yeah.
From the
condiment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also the guy who would, he was in a lot of our Q&A sessions.
Yeah.
But he said, "Hi, JJ and Kitchen. I've emerged from my fantasy seclusion in the West Wing. Are you the Jeffrey Lebowski to Kitchen's Brandt? Did you ever watch West Wing?"
No.
Yeah, me either. Okay.
Sorry, guys. No.
I thought you might have watched West Wing.
Not to get political.
Yeah. West Wing is just a political show.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. All right. Important news or important reminder. This is from Will Route. Don't believe any breaking news you see today.
Yeah, we didn't have a single April Fool's joke because April Fool's is dumb. That's my stance.
As you get older, it loses a little bit of its luster.
Oh my gosh, because people make it too realistic.
Yeah.
It's too much. Like my wife this morning told me that she has to go on a work trip the week we get back from vacation. And it's like a very believable story. And I'm like, oh, let me check my calendar. And then she's just sitting there smirking. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding.
Okay, well, I do kind of love that your wife April Fool's you.
Why is that good? No one likes April
Fool's.
That's
awesome.
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. That is awesome.
No.
And
We
we're
don't need to-
big fans of your wife around here. You know, we voted for her her bench.
The cow bench. Yeah. If you guys
Cow
are in
bench.
Davidson, North Carolina, there is a bench in the
Yes.
middle of the town that is a cow because there's a
Yeah.
Ben and Jerry's, and they had a contest to name it, and we named it and we won with the
Yes.
help of the Discord.
The late round community surrounded
Yeah.
Amanda with all sorts of votes and support. So
Yeah.
yeah, shout out to Amanda for April Fools and you, JJ. Shout out to everyone for liking, subscribing, leaving a comment that's positive, a positive review on a podcast.
Look, you can leave negative reviews. Just make it like a reasonable thing, you know, like not something that I didn't even say. If I ruined your team last year, fine. You know, that's going to happen. But yeah, just make it a real thing. That's what I care about most as well, we won't get into the Enneagram stuff. I care about not being misinterpreted. It's very important to me. Okay. So if you're going to misinterpret me and then give me a bad rating, it hurts me in my core. But if you want to give me a bad rating because of something I actually did say, fair, very fair.
I'm a 7, so I'm just here for the good times. And this
Nothing
was a
bad.
good time.
Nothing bad with you. You're just everything's good.
Hey, this is fine. The fire's around. This is fine. That's how I feel legitimately sometimes. Go to lateround.com, sign up to get the newsletter for free, or sign up to become a Patreon or get the prospect guide. JJ, happy April 1st. We're in April now, so we are that much closer to the draft. Enjoy your spring break trip. Enjoy your vacation. Unplug a little. And we will see everybody in 2 weeks. Peace.